So Shafqat, with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I would like to extend my own warm welcome to all of you for joining us this afternoon. As someone who has lived in several ASEAN countries throughout my life, including many years in Singapore, I have always been really impressed with the way ASEAN has been able to create an identity for its citizens, a regional identity, and the kind of coordination and cooperation that exists within ASEAN countries amongst each other. And a great example, as Mr. Lee very correctly mentioned, is ASEAN's ability to even mediate on contentious issues such as the recent spat between Thailand and Cambodia. And for South Asians, I think, especially considering the moribund nature of regional cooperation in our part of the world, this offers a real example. The previous two speakers have very wonderfully highlighted the various facets of ASEAN and how we can cooperate with it. I want to touch a bit upon strategic and security cooperation. But before that, I want to mention that ever since our inception as an independent nation state, it has been our priority to always engage deeply with Southeast Asia. Even in the mid to late 70s, during President Ziaur Rahman's time, we saw robust engagement with various ASEAN countries, including all the ASEAN member states at that time, with inward and outward visits and so on. And whether it was defense cooperation, security cooperation, economic cooperation, Southeast Asia has always been our priority. And I don't think we can belabor on this fact enough that Bangladesh is a bridge nation between South Asia and Southeast Asia. While we are an important and integral part of the South Asian region, a part of Bangladesh also technically or geographically perhaps lies inside Southeast Asia. So we are a land bridge between those two vibrant regions, and therefore I'm very heartened that the interim government led by Professor Yunus has really made it a priority to talk about greater engagement with ASEAN. Now, in terms of strategic and security cooperation, what are some of the areas where we could work more with ASEAN? So, I mean, we could talk for hours, but in the interest of time, I have looked at a few areas where I think we could cooperate, deepen our cooperation. Firstly, I think it is very important for us to note that we have been a member of ARF, or ASEAN Regional Forum, since 2006. And most recently, in April this year, we hosted the 21st ARF Inter-Sessional Meeting on Counterterrorism and Transnational Crime. I think, Anna, you were there as well, right? So this is one forum where we really need to engage more deeply, especially in the areas of counterterrorism and transnational crime, where we have a lot of expertise that we have built over the years, but we could also learn significantly from the expertise of ASEAN member states. And whether it is in priority areas such as combating illicit drugs, preventing and countering violent extremism, tackling trafficking in persons, and improving border security management. This is an area where I definitely see a lot of synergy potentially that could be developed between Bangladesh and ARF and ASEAN writ large. The other area where we could also engage in a lot of cooperation is both in terms of maritime security and in cybersecurity. Bangladesh and ASEAN, ladies and gentlemen, share overlapping maritime challenges such as piracy, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and of course, the growing issues of geostrategic competition in the Bay of Bengal and the seas that fall within the ASEAN region. So more joint initiatives, including in areas of maritime domain awareness, intelligence sharing, and collaborative surveillance, including using satellite and digital platforms, could be important ways in which Bangladesh can cooperate with ASEAN. ASEAN states such as Singapore also have things like the Changi Fusion Center, where we would potentially like to see more cooperation and on maritime security issues. Cybersecurity is often not prioritized enough in Bangladesh, although we have faced significant cybersecurity challenges such as the Bangladesh Bank heist. And I would like to propose that we need to significantly enhance our cybersecurity cooperation with ASEAN, especially because ASEAN's ability to tackle cybersecurity is at a much more advanced level. whether it is through the ASEAN Cybersecurity Cooperation Strategy, which provides a high-level policy roadmap, or operational bodies such as the ASEAN CERT or the ASEAN Cybercrime Operations Desk, which is run in cooperation with Interpol. ASEAN has already taken a leap in terms of tackling cybersecurity challenges. So through our participation in ARF and also bilaterally, there is a real opportunity for us to leverage in terms of cybersecurity cooperation. Just to give you an example of how much cybersecurity is prioritized within the ASEAN region, Singapore, a couple of years ago, has now created a separate force within its armed services called the Digital and Intelligence Service. So in addition to Army, Navy, and Air Force, it's a fourth arm of the Singapore Armed Forces. So this is the level of priority that ASEAN member states are according to cybersecurity, cyber defense, cyber operations, and so on. And given our growing cybersecurity challenges, this is an area where we could certainly engage. The chair mentioned about the ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance, in short, the AHA Center. It's a real center of excellence which has emerged as an example of how HADR or humanitarian assistance and disaster relief cooperation can work at a regional level. The AHA Center has emerged as an operational hub not only for regional disaster management under One ASEAN, One Response framework, but it also does research, provides best practices, and so on. It coordinates relief, deployment, disaster preparedness, and partnership with UN agencies, the Red Cross, and civil society. Over the years, AHA Center has strengthened logistics, forecasting, and early warning systems in cooperation with partners such as the Mekong River Commission and Mercy Malaysia. Bangladesh can certainly enhance its collaboration with the AHA Center by establishing a formal liaison mechanism between its disaster management authorities and the center. This would support our efforts in cyclone preparedness, harmonized early warning systems, pre-positioned relief supplies, and capacity building through ASEAN's response teams. We have an opportunity to deepen our cooperation with ASEAN through the AHA Center, but overall on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief issues. And we should potentially also look at a South Asian variant of the AHA Center, where Bangladesh can potentially take a lead. Bangladesh currently engages in robust defense cooperation with several ASEAN member states, including Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei, and so on. But there is an opportunity for us to also leverage the ASEAN mechanism by expanding beyond bilateral ties to include multilateral cooperation under the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus mechanisms. We have a lot of complementarity with several of the ASEAN militaries, so increased military-to-military exchanges, military training and education programs, and greater participation in ASEAN-led search and rescue and peacekeeping exercise would not only enhance our defense diplomacy, but also deepen our engagement with ASEAN. As many of you will be aware, or most of you will be aware, Bangladesh has made great strides over the past years in terms of peacekeeping training through BIPSOT, Bangladesh Institute of Peace Support Operations Training. And there are several ASEAN states which also have peacekeeping centers. We could also look at how BIPSOT could cooperate individually with those peacekeeping centers, but also with the ASEAN framework as well in terms of peacekeeping cooperation. Because given our nearly 4 decades long experience in peacekeeping operations, we have now an opportunity to share best practices, training, and also various know-how on how armed forces and police and paramilitary forces can participate in peace support operations. So I think that is an area which so far, hitherto I don't think it has been explored much, but I would like to suggest that peacekeeping cooperation could be another way where we could work more with ASEAN in the domain of defense and security. As we enter the intelligence age, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a greater need for countries like Bangladesh to think about digital connectivity, emerging technologies, and the catch-all phrase of artificial intelligence. On AI and emerging technologies, ASEAN as a bloc, but member states within ASEAN are actually working quite significantly. And Bangladesh can engage with ASEAN in areas like AI ethics, data governance, security of e-commerce to support our own national digital transformation agenda. And within economic cooperation as well, the framework of economic cooperation as well, there will be now a greater reliance or greater focus on artificial intelligence where Bangladesh and ASEAN as a bloc, but also member states can operate. In terms of training of diplomats, we already have a lot of engagement bilaterally with ASEAN states, but we could potentially look at our Foreign Service Academy running more programs for diplomats of ASEAN states. So while we talk about membership, and Dr. Chaudhary has very articulately explained why membership is not really the pathway, but sectoral dialogue partnership is. So while we talk about sectoral dialogue partnership, and especially as a new government, inshallah, takes over at the beginning of next year, we would like to see a greater and more deepened engagement with ASEAN. And we had a Look East policy before. I would like to suggest we should now look at a Look East 2.0, where we have to prioritize our engagement with Southeast Asia. And we have to leverage on the fact that Bangladesh is a land bridge between South and Southeast Asia. And through all my years of living in Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Singapore, I have seen that how much ASEAN has been able to progress because it's prioritized the regional identity over parochial national identities. And that is perhaps the biggest lesson that ASEAN can offer Bangladesh and South Asia. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think wonderful points have been made, and I think I was very heartened that we had a good debate on membership versus sectoral dialogue partnership, what are the pathways, hurdles, and so on. I think we have to be practical, and I would start by saying that a lot of what we have discussed would have to be taken up by the new elected government, which, if we go by the declarations of the chief advisor, are about 5 months and a bit away from an election. So a new elected government would have to take up a lot of these challenges. Secondly, we have to be practical about what is the pathway available to us. We can talk about membership endlessly, but that's not going to be possible. So we should leverage on the opportunity that we have, that is sectoral dialogue partnership, and work towards that. For too long, Bangladesh's foreign policy has been guided by ad hocism and without any clear and coherent strategy. Our fervent hope from the new government is that we would be able to establish some priority areas. And I should say that those of us in the strategic community, we believe that engaging with Southeast Asia and ASEAN should be a top priority for any government. We also have to deepen our understanding of Southeast Asia and ASEAN. I'm very pleased that we have a colleague from the Bangladesh University of Professionals who teaches Southeast Asian studies. More of our universities who teach international relations should offer courses on Southeast Asian studies, where we are able to have a greater understanding about the politics, history, and culture of the ASEAN region. Because if at some point we aspire for membership, we also have to develop an identity which aligns with ASEAN. I think that is very important. I would also say that we have to make ourselves relevant for ASEAN, and we also have to, as Mr. Lee very rightly pointed out, we have to also build our institutions so that ASEAN feels that we can actually contribute to the body. And even for East Timor or Timor-Leste, which is going to get membership soon, it has been a long graduated process. It's not that we flick a switch and we become a member tomorrow. I think that is how ASEAN has managed to thrive while other regional organizations have become moribund. There was a point where SAARC was basically accepting anybody as an observer without actually asking the question whether more observers should be taken, and then each member state was advocating for one country or the other to become a new member. Unfortunately, that has led to the current state of SAARC because we could never reach a consensus on those issues. But ASEAN, on the other hand, has a more graduated, more policy-oriented, evidence-based process where these things will take time. So we have to have that patience. There are many things that we can learn from ASEAN. None of us have talked about the ASEAN Dhaka Committee, and maybe, Mitchell, you can just briefly touch upon it. But I long for a day where South Asian ambassadors would also get together in spite of their bilateral differences and present a common forum in international capitals. It's not that ASEAN countries bilaterally do not have disputes. Two of the ASEAN countries had a major spat recently. But look at the maturity with which the way the regional body and those member states have managed those conflicts. Unfortunately, although our regional association, SAARC, today would have been 40 years old, but we have not been able to hold a summit for so long. So it gives me a lot of, I would say, a sense of desolation, but it also gives me hope that there are regional bodies such as ASEAN who have really presented in many ways the Asian view to the world. And even today, the United States, when it talks about its Indo-Pacific strategy, it puts such a premium on ASEAN centrality. So I think it's a real example for us. We would, at BIPS, and we would really like to see Bangladesh spend more time and energy on integrating with, learning from, and engaging with ASEAN and Southeast Asia. But I would also say that requires a coherent strategy, and we need to go beyond declaratory statements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shafqat.